So I went with Jackson and with my family to see the new Avatar movie a week or so ago.
Yes, I remember.
And you chose not to go.
Right.
Because children.
I had a few at home I was watching.
Right. And I appreciated you letting me go. It was a pretty good time. But during the movie, there was a part that came up more than once, that was touching to me in the movie, but as I've been thinking about it after the fact, I think is worth thinking about from a marriage standpoint. What do you think?
Well, let's get into that. Before we jump into today's episode, we just wanted to share a few things with you. First, we'd like you to like this episode and then subscribe to our podcast. If you're doing that on YouTube, also hit the bell notification so that you know when we post anything new. And then share this with somebody that you feel like this would be beneficial for.
That's right. If you would like to support our show further, we would welcome that. You are welcome to do that at anchor.fm/marriagebydesign to check out your options for supporting the program financially. Otherwise, guys, the links to our social media are always in the description of every video, so feel free to check those out there. And now, let's get to the show.
Hey, I'm Andrea Warnock.
I'm Nathan Warnock.
And you joined us for Marriage Monday on the Marriage by Design podcast. And this is a time where we get to talk to you about God's design for marriage, what the Bible has to say about marriage, and how we apply that to our lives.
That's right. And we really appreciate you guys joining us. Today, we're going to do kind of more of a practical Marriage Monday, a little bit, talking about the importance of being seen. And I'm using that term maybe not quite literally, but as we kind of flesh out this sort of thought that I've had bouncing around inside my head a little bit, I think you'll understand what I mean. So I mentioned in the cold open that I went and saw Avatar, the new, whatever it is, Way of the Water. And it was fine. I'll be honest. And you're welcome to leave hate comments in the comment section below if you would like to. Avatar is probably not my favorite universe. I love sci-fi. I enjoy that quite a bit. Andrea loves sci-fi as well.
No, not at all.
And I know that's maybe not like technically sci-fi or however you want to think about it, but it's fine. Frankly, I think my favorite part of Avatar is the part of Disney World that is the Avatar world because it's really cool.
It is really cool.
And the rides are fun. So I like that part probably better than the movies. But the movies are fine. And the new one was fine too. And so this is not a movie review channel, as Andrea told you a few moments ago, but something happened in that movie that made me think a little bit. And I'm thinking about this in the context of, so if you're watching this after the fact, it just clicked over 8 days ago to 2023. So it's January 8th, 2023. So the last, let's call it 3 years in this world and in this country have been flying at the speed of light, would you say? And we're just changing so many things about the way human beings think about human beings that there's a lot of stuff up in the air.
Yeah, I would say 2020 really turned a lot of things on its head.
Right. So, in the Avatar movie, and this took place in the first one as well, there's a number of times where when the Na'vi, the Avatar
Big blue
people, thank you, when they're trying to connect with someone or give their gratitude or tell them they respect them or honor them, they oftentimes will look at them and put their hand in front of their face and do like one of these. I don't want to block the microphone. But then what they say is...
And if you're listening and not watching...
Yeah, it's like holding your hand in front of your face and then like moving it away from your face. Almost like you're blowing a kiss kind of
from your forehead.
Motion. From your forehead, yeah. And they do it different ways, but they always say the same thing. And the thing that they say is, I see you. And sort of in the context of the Avatar mythos, it means this kind of I honor you, I respect you, but it almost has this almost religious feel to it because of their religion and all of that. And this is really doesn't have anything to do with that. But this idea of in the movie, it means more than just I literally have eyes on you. It means I'm with you. Like, I understand you. I empathize with you. And again, in the context of the last 3 years, a time when, regardless what you thought of 2020 and the events of that, people are hurting and feeling alone now more than they probably ever have. I'm talking about just on a mass scale. Depression is skyrocketed, suicide is skyrocketed, particularly amongst young people. There's a lot of pain out there. And I wonder how much of that pain is because there are people that, even though the world has quote unquote gotten smaller and smaller and smaller with social media and all the other things, people don't feel known anymore. They don't feel seen in the way that that's used in Avatar. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit, both to those who may be tuning into this channel and you don't feel seen, you don't feel known. I want you to stick with us to the end, but I want to assure you right up front, you are. You are seen, you are known. And that means both from a literal standpoint and the inner part of you, the part you've never even shared with anyone else, is known. And you don't have to feel alone because you are known. And I want to encourage, all of us that are watching this channel, this includes Andrea and I, to allow yourself to be known here on earth, I guess is the way to say that. Don't
in our mortal state.
Right. Don't isolate. That's, I guess, what I'm saying. And again, this is not a pandemic conversation. This is just a don't isolate yourself from others. If you watched our episode that we came out with sort of midweek this week, that was one of the points we made. Human beings are pack animals. And you don't have to go any further than Genesis to know that. The Lord creates Eve. They get cast out of the garden. But then what's God tell them? Be fruitful and multiply. Right? We're called to be people that multiply, and we're called to be a people of community. Well, first and foremost, community with God, and second of all, community with each other.
Well, God created Adam and said, it's not good that man should be alone.
That's
I need to create for him a helpmeet.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
He saw man alone and realized that's not right. That's not good.
That's right. And even God isn't alone.
Right.
If we're talking about Yahweh God, there's also Jesus Christ and there's the Holy Spirit, and together they make up the Trinity, but they're in perfect community with each other as well.
Yep.
So what I want to talk about first is what this looks like with regards to your spouse. So this is a marriage channel. This is a marriage show, Marriage Monday. And my belief is that there is a lot of hurt, ongoing hurt, and strife going on in marriages because we don't go out of our way to make sure the other people know that the other person, our spouse, knows that we see them. And this can come up a ton of ways, and babe, you can help me brainstorm some practical ways that we've heard from people, or maybe that you feel this way with me, which is fair. But things like when the other person's speaking and you can tell your spouse is just waiting for you to finish so that they can respond, that doesn't make you feel seen. And again, I'm using this play on the Avatar movie, but maybe the better way to say it is you don't feel known. And when you're in a marriage relationship, I'm not sure there's anything more destructive to the marriage relationship than feeling like your spouse doesn't know you and doesn't want to know you. And I mean know you. Know how you tick, know how you think, know what you're going through with the Lord, know what you're going through emotionally, more than just how are the kids, how was work, what's on the calendar tonight. And man, we've got to go out of our way to make our spouse feel known.
Sure.
Because here on earth, we're a picture of God's desired relationship with us, and we do that imperfectly, but it starts with being known.
Right. Yeah, it's certainly relationally invigorating to know that the person that I've chosen to spend the rest of my life with understands me, even the small little things about me, and that he continues to try to know me and understand me and the ways in which I change and try to walk with me in that and understand those things. That's definitely invigorating for our relationship. And it feels like I'm special and I'm worth being known. And, in the big ways and the small ways. Like something silly is last night we were going to bed, and this is a longer story than I meant it to be, but our oldest son stole my pillow like 3 years ago, and it's a really nice pillow, and I've let him have it for 3 years, but it's really nice and I miss it. And our oldest son was spending the night at his grandparents last night, and so we were going to bed, and Nathan he had gotten the pillow out of our son's room and brought it to our room, and it was just one of those little sweet things that Nathan has heard me say, oh, I miss that pillow, whatever. And he thought to go get the pillow, just though, that's such a tiny little example, but kind of to be known in that way, and that he cares. He doesn't just know, but he cares to do something about it. It's invigorating for our relationship. I feel special when he gets me gifts that really are not things that I maybe specifically asked for, but he knows that I would like them or appreciate them or whatever. And he kind of just hits it with a gift. It feels good to be known and that he cared to really put the thought and the effort into it and those sorts of things.
And you may be listening to this and going, man, I don't feel like I even know my spouse well enough to do those kinds of things. And I'd encourage you, 1 Peter 3:7 says, likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to her as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. That idea of likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way means be a student of your wife. And
it is special to feel like somebody's observing me continuously and trying to, understand me.
Right, but that takes intentionality.
It does.
It takes sacrifice, if you want to think of it that way. I mean, I understand, particularly if you don't have a close level of intimacy in your relationship, it can be hard to figure out, what do we do? And, it's hard because I feel like there isn't any. It's sort of like when you're overweight and you go, man, I really don't want to be overweight anymore, but working out hurts a lot. I think we all know at some point you go, well, which pain is greater? Mm-hmm. Like, is the pain of being overweight and unhealthy greater than the pain of going through that difficult initial period of time to get your body to a level of fitness again? That's kind of where you're at here. If you're going, man, I don't even know how to start at a starting level of intimacy with my spouse, is you have a choice to make. You can continue to have a disjointed lack of intimacy in your marriage, or you can do the difficult thing and have some awkward, perhaps angry, maybe sad conversations for the first while to get through that, and then have that intimacy. But the choice is really only yours. There's not a there's no button you can push that just makes it happen.
Yes, unfortunately, there's no technology where you just hook up your brain to something and you download the information that you want into your brain.
Yeah.
I do wish there was that, though.
Yeah, me too. But I'm glad you bring up technology, because that might be the place some people watching this need to start.
Yeah,
stop it.
Well, or if you're a forgetful person,
Yeah,
you could use it to your advantage too.
Sure. So explore that idea first, and then I'll
Get
bring
to
I'll bring the
stop
not
it
fun
part. So if you know that your spouse would, that your spouse would appreciate a text in the middle of a random day, but you're like, oh, I just get so on track with what I'm doing during the days, I just don't even really think about doing that. Right. Then you can then send the text at 10 p.m. at night when you are thinking about it, but do a delayed, whatever that is.
Schedule the text
message? A scheduled text, yeah, so that it goes to your spouse during the middle of the day.
I gotta do something wrong.
Yeah, right. Put things in your calendar, on your to-do list, or whatever you're looking at that helps you to be an adult and get things done like you do probably at your job.
Right.
Maybe your spouse needs to become part of your... Understanding your spouse needs to become your job for a while.
It is your job.
And, I mean in a way that you're putting significant effort into it for a while like you do with your job. And then... after a while, it will probably become just more habit and less something that you have to intentionally do and set the time frame that you do it or whatever. But for a while, it may become your job. And we don't live Nicholas Sparks relationships. We don't. Things like this don't just happen because they happen. If you want a life-giving, understanding marriage, it takes choosing that, it takes intentionality, and you're not doing it. It doesn't happen just because you feel like it all the time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Andrea and I did not get to a point where I was listening to things like, oh, I love that pillow. I wish that turd of a child of ours wouldn't have stolen it. That was the nice version of what she said.
That was not at all.
But my point is, like, you and I have worked hard intentionally on this over the years. And I don't say that to say, hey, look, we're pretty cool. What I'm saying is, if you haven't listened to our background of our story, go back and listen to it. Because
you'll know we're not very cool.
If there would ever be a couple that shouldn't be having close intimacy in their relationship, it would be us. And yet we do, not perfect intimacy. There's a lot of areas we need to be better in. But from where we were to now, to have inside jokes and have this sort of close relationship where I feel seen by you, I feel known by you, and I hope you feel known by me too. Not perfectly, but regularly, and that took a lot of work. And if you're watching this and you go, man, we want that in our relationship, it's gonna take a lot of work, and at least for us, tears and intentionality and turning off all the electronics, right? Like, perhaps you need to schedule some time to just say, hey, from 7 to 9 on weeknights, or 8 to 10, or 9 to 11, or whatever it is, we're not going to do electronics. We're not going to have our phones out. We're not going to be watching TV. Or maybe it's a couple nights a week or one night a week. But I'll tell you what, those electronics, they're like boiling a frog. Mm-hmm. Because you think you're doing something together because you're with the other person. But if you do that night after night after night after night after night, now turn the TV off and see how well phones. You know that person.
Right.
Because you've been sitting, just because you're sitting together doesn't mean you know them.
Yeah, super interesting. I was just today listening to something that Ben Shapiro had said, and he was talking about his phone, and he was like, I'm addicted. I mean, I just admit, I'm addicted to my phone, but I have to shut it off from Friday at sundown until Saturday at sundown.
Because he's Jewish.
Right. Yes, yeah. He's Jewish, so he's Orthodox Jew, so he observes the Sabbath with no technology. And he said it's such a great time for him, and it's such a great reset too. And I think he was saying something like it helps him to realize really how addicted he is, and it kind of pulls him back. And anyway, and I was thinking, it's so true that we're all probably addicted to technology in certain ways. And to have a time where you say, I'm not doing it, is probably a really great thing.
Right.
And helps you to, it helps you to see life in a completely different way. That is so sad, but it's true. It helps you to see, to see people more.
That's right. In the movie, and also when we look at the way the Lord deals with Moses and Joshua, and I think of when probably Christ, that's my belief, met with Abraham in the form of one of those travelers that went and met with him. He ate with him. Like, it wasn't, if you remember, I know I'm bouncing around the Bible, but the story of Jesus and Zacchaeus went up in the tree.
Little man.
Thank you. A wee little man was he.
He climbed up in a sycamore tree
and
to
Jesus,
see what he could
Jesus
see.
Found him.
We're not going to finish that.
But Jesus looks at him and says, come down from there. I'm dining at your house today. I intentionally did not quote the song.
I'm like, woo, do the song.
But that was Jesus' way. The woman at the well. Mm-hmm. What impressed her about him initially was that, hey, you're talking to me.
And
do you know who I am?
Very uncustomary.
But what actually reached her was that Jesus knew her. The previous husband she had, the man she's currently living with who's not her husband, he knew about these things. And when he could look her in the eyes and say, essentially, I see who you are, that's the moment when she opened her heart up to him. And then what did he say? Okay, now go and sin no more. He had the credibility to deliver the difficult message to her because she felt known. And for us, marriage is hard. There's a lot of downs to marriage. There's a lot of ups too, but marriage is a difficult thing to do. And I'm not sure it's sustainable if both of you aren't able to slog through the difficult times because you know you're known by at least one other person in that family or in that relationship.
Right.
Right? Like, you and I might not be on the same page. We might be arguing or just not happy with each other. What did Ryan
call the other day?
Fighting? Did she say?
No. She said something like having a spat or something. I don't remember.
A tiff? Did she say
something
tiff?
Like that. I don't know.
She might have said spat. Anyway, when we're having a spat, part of what helps us to get through it is this underlying knowledge that you see me. And you're not looking past me. You're not looking around at someone else. Your eyes are only for me. And man, that empowers me to push on doing the things I know I need to do within our marriage. But you have to have an environment in your marriage of seeing the other person. And maybe for a time, this just needs to be a flow in your relationship, that you look at each other and just say, honey, I see you. And just have that be the cue between the two of you that we're on a journey of deeper intimacy with each other, and it starts with a desire to know and be known within your marriage. And this expands beyond our marriage, right? I mean, if we're starting in at the marriage and expanding out, certainly this is applicable to your family, and maybe we ought to do a companion Family Friday to talk about how we make this real to our kids. But for today, once we go outside the marriage, then I think the next layer to that is our community. And there are so many couples, even couples with good marriages, where they are known between the two of them, but they're not expanding outside of that marriage with regards to who they're allowing to know them. And again, we're pack animals. as human beings. We're meant to be a part of a community. A family, yes. A marriage, yes, if you're called to that. But more than that, a community of those who will push us in the glory of God.
Right. Yeah, and it starts first with being known by the Lord. Of course, the Lord knows every part of our being and who we really are, but there are also parts that we can try to hide from him. And while that doesn't really make sense because he knows them, it's reality that we do try to hide things from him. And
Sure.
Allowing yourself to be known starts with your relationship with the Lord and being totally open with him, and then being totally open with your spouse. Especially if there's been hurt in this area, I'm sure it's hard to think of. I've already, like, why would I want to do that? Because I've been doing that, and my spouse is not paying attention.
Right.
But where does that get you? Just continuing down the road that you're on.
Yeah.
So choose to keep doing the hard thing of allowing opportunity for your spouse to know you. And if that gets fumbled, but keep trying and keep trying to know your spouse, but you have to also be one to be willing to let your spouse know who you are, and willing to lay things all out there and maybe multiple times, and tell them the deep inner recesses of your thoughts and heart and all that sort of thing. And then as far as the community part that you were talking about, being your spouse should be the person on earth that knows you the best. There shouldn't be anybody else who knows you better than your spouse, because there are parts about you that you should only be sharing with your spouse.
Right.
But then you should have a community, a close-knit group of people that know you really well. And that's great for accountability too, because they can start picking out things that they might see and say, wait, whoa, that's not sounding quite right. But you have to be known by a close group of that's in your community.
And that is invigorating in and of itself.
Right.
I mean,
for your own self, but for your marriage, it's just so necessary for having a great, life.
And if you do that correctly, meaning you make sure that there are people, and we've done an episode on friendship, and we've done episodes on mentoring. If you're talking about, if we're honest, our friendships are a combination of those things. Right? I mean, we have some friends that are more mentors than friends, some friends that are more friends that maybe we're more mentoring, and some that are pretty even mix of both. And the one thing that I will say about all of our friends all of our close friends, are that they are of like mind with regards to marriage and regards to the Lord. They challenge us in our marriage.
Yep.
They challenge us in our
faith
and in our parenting. And they like to have fun the same ways we like to have fun. But there are you just went out with a number of your girlfriends a few nights ago, and I'm sure you were able to have plenty of conversations that you and I aren't having. And I don't mean that you and I wouldn't have, but I mean where you're like, I don't really care what Nathan has to say about this particular thing, because I'm a girl, he's a boy. I like to talk about these things with my girlfriends.
Sure.
And we have those same conversations when I get together with those guys. And that's fun. And it's, again, we're not like, when I got together with those guys after you got together with the girls, we talked a lot about what the girls had talked about. So it's not that they're secrets. It's just that we're different.
Right.
And those friends, that community, it all encompasses to help you be known by a group of people. And there's something secure about having a group of people around you that know who you are. Not that know the thing you want them to think you are, but the thing you actually are. And man, that's probably my biggest encouragement in this area if you're watching this. The people that you say are closest in your life, do they know who you really are, or do they know who you want them to think you are? We say oftentimes, and I'm tattooless at this point, but if I ever get a tattoo, this is what it's going to be. The phrase "to be and not to seem." It's based on a play by Plato, but the whole point of it is this is just who you are, to be and not to seem like something else.
Right.
So as you think about those friends, are you just being, or are you trying to be this person for this group of people and this person for this group of people and this person when I'm at home with my spouse? Because that's not sustainable. And ultimately it's going to lead to pain and suffering, depression in your life because you're a double-minded individual. You're trying to keep all your different personalities straight. It's not being known. And it's impossible for someone to look at you and say, I see you, if you won't even let them see who you really are yourself. So find that community. Get it serious in your marriage. Find that community. And the last thing, and Andrea already mentioned it, so we'll just talk about it briefly. The Bible teaches really clearly that God knows you. If you go back and read Psalm 139, it's a psalm that David wrote. And in it, he talks about the Lord knowing him in the depths of his mother's womb. Even while he was knitting him together in his mother's womb, David was known by the Lord. Throughout the Old Testament, you can look in Ezekiel, specifically Ezekiel 6. You can look in throughout Deuteronomy. So often in those giving of the law portions, the Lord would give a piece of law, and then he would say the same thing over and over and over again at the end. Do you remember what that thing is, babe?
Mm-mm.
And then they will
know me.
And then they will know that I am the Lord. Mm-hmm. In Ezekiel, because the Israelites had already rejected God and were paying the consequence for that, he changed it a little bit to say, and then they will remember that I am God. God's desire is not just to know us, because as David points out, he knows you. He knows you. Not what you want him to think you are. Doesn't matter how much good you do in your life. God sees through that to who you are. What motivates you, what pushes you. God knows you. But yet this all-knowing, all-powerful God also desires to be known by you, to be known by us. That's why he gave us marriage and family and these other things.
Isn't that funny? We're image bearers of the Lord. We desire to be known. So does the Lord.
Right. Right. It's one of those just kind of mind-boggling things when you think about it, because when we think about all-powerful gods, you might be thinking of Zeus or these kinds, and those people didn't give a crap about being known, right? They just sort of used the earth as a plaything. That's not who God is.
Because that creates intimacy in marriage, or
right.
sorry, in relationship. He wants to be known by us, just like we want to be known as well.
Right.
As people.
It would have been really easy for him to just give us a treatise on these are the things about God. And before you say it, yes, that's what the Bible is. But the thing that makes the Bible incredible is you can study it 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 times all the way through, and you will learn something new about who God is every time.
Yeah.
Because God didn't just give us a bullet point of, here's who I am, the end. He gave us this narrative in the Old Testament and the New Testament. Plus, I'm reading Romans right now, and Paul talks about how the Gentiles knew God from nature around them, right? We see that in our founding documents here in the United States. They talk about from nature and knowing God from nature and nature's laws, because God created nature, and so we see God in and through nature. We see it in the changing of the seasons. We see it in death and new life. We see God throughout nature. And so we see God in all of these areas. But the question is, do we really know him? And knowing someone like your spouse, like getting a community of people around you, it takes intentionality. It takes choosing to want to be known and choosing to want to know. And so as you ponder that, we would ask you the question of, are you known by your spouse? Are you known by a community of those who can support you? You are known by God, but do you know him? Because we're created to be naked and unashamed. We're created to be transparent and innocent. And that only happens when we know from where we come and know our position before an almighty God and within our community and within our marriage.
Yeah.
Anything to add, baby?
I think just as you were saying that we're created to be naked and unashamed, which you said something and innocent, known and innocent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that naked and unashamed in relationship with the Lord and with other people, but specifically with the Lord, comes from following him in obedience out of love, you know? So I don't know that we're going to get that. You can't walk away from what the Lord's asking you to do and be naked and unashamed with the Lord. And so how that just shows such an importance of choosing to do what the Lord is asking us to do for that, knowing the Lord and him knowing you. You know, that's going to be such an important piece of it.
Right.
Anyway, that was just a thought I had that you said that.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Guys, really appreciate you joining us. We always love being able to start off the week, sharing with you, being a part of this community. Thanks so much for giving us your time. So appreciate that. Pray and hope that you have a wonderful week moving into the second full week of the new year. So go and conquer the week. If you have any comments for us, leave them in the comments below. Feel free to shoot us an email at marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. We respond to every email and every comment that we receive. Would love to get your feedback. Until then, guys, thanks so much for joining us. And remember, God is for your marriage. We see you. Have a good week.